So in this tutorial, we're going to look at how to use adjustment layers option to edit color and effects of your image. So let's first go ahead and create a new file. This file is going to be a 5 by 7 inch file. You want to make sure it's a landscape format, so 7 inches wide, 5 inches width. Rest of it is the same, 300 pixels per inch, RGB, white background. Go ahead and create. Once we have this, let's go ahead and pull in our image. This is the image that we've downloaded from in-class activity 5. So I'm going to hit open, and this is the image that we're going to open up. So I'm going to hit open. I'm going to go ahead and select the entire image. I use my rectangular marquee tool, and I've pasted it here. So in this tutorial, or this exercise that we're doing, we actually want to keep our original image as it is and make different variations of it by exploring different tools. So the first thing what we want to do is make a duplicate layer for this. You can go ahead and duplicate this by right-clicking on your layers panel. So go ahead to your layers panel, right-click, and you will get duplicate layer. And if you hit that, that's going to create a duplicate layer. Before you do so, it's going to ask you what you want to name your duplicate layer. So I'm going to name this image 2. And let's rename this image 1. All right, so now I have image 1 and I have image 2. I'm going to place them side by side. Let's go ahead and increase the size of this. So the method I used to increase both of those sizes was I selected one image first, clicked on this image, it selected image 2. I pressed and held the second one. I selected the first image first. So I clicked on this image 2 to select it. I press and held shift key, and then I go ahead and click on the next image. And that's going to give you a selection option or transformation tool option for both your images. Okay. Once you've resized it, go ahead and hit commit to transformation. All right, so the editing option that we're going to look at here today is this adjustment option right here. So if you go over to your layers panel, you will see a little circle, and that is your adjustment layers. I'm going to do my adjustment to image 2. So I'm going to click on image 2 first, and then I'm going to open up my adjustment panel. When I click on that, you can see it opens up a little box, drop-down box, actually drop-up box with different options. These options here are sort of playing around with your levels in your image. So sort of working with the amount of light or darkness that you have in your image. So all these options here are going to help you play around with this. The third options here are all working with adjusting colors. So if you want to adjust some specific color, you want to go ahead and check these options here. These are all sort of additional options. We're not going to go and look at it any further. You can play around with it to see what it does, but we'll not go into detail. So we're just going to go ahead and explore a few basic tools here. A lot of it can get really complex, but all we want to achieve is the ability to edit some of these layers using these adjustment tools that we have here. And a lot of this still works similar to how you edit your photographs when you put them on Instagram, for example. You have an option to sharpen your image, change the contrast, change the brightness, change the what else is there? They have quite a lot of saturation. They have a lot of those options, and you're going to get some of those similar options here as well. So let's go ahead and check brightness and contrast for the first. Okay, I'm going to hit brightness and contrast. As you see, what happens is I get a new pop-up layer that happened when I clicked on that, which says brightness and contrast, and that automatically creates a layer mask as well. So that's the layer mask option that you get. Along with that, you have a properties panel that opened up with your options of how to edit brightness and contrast. So here I can move these levers up and down to adjust my brightness. So I'm going to move that a little bit over there, and this is to adjust your contrast. So contrast is going to affect the contrast of the colors in your image. So as you can see, when I reduce that, it becomes more flattened. You can see the difference between the colors I have intensified as I increase my contrast. So you can move those panels around to edit your contrast and your brightness. If at all you accidentally do this and you want to bring it back to your original, you can hit this undo button or reset button, and that's going to bring it back to your original value of 0, 0. Okay. So let's just go ahead and play around a little bit here so that we have some effect applied. Another thing you want to keep an eye out is when you add an adjustment layer. As you can see, when I'm increasing my brightness, it is affecting all my layers below it. So it's affecting both image 1 and image 2. But I want to leave image 1 as the original image without any changes. And to do that, we are going to use a clipping tool. So we are going to, this adjustment that we've just made, we are going to clip it. And for that, you just hit this little icon here. If you click that, you see what just happened. This is without clipping. Now it's been affected on both layers. This is with clipping. It only is applied to the layer right below it. So if you want some sort of adjustment applied to one particular layer, you want to make sure that you edit that layer, add whatever adjustment you want, and make sure you clip it to that particular layer. So that's what's happening here. You can see that my edit to my brightness and contrast is being applied only to image 2. I am going to just reduce this brightness. I don't want it to be that bright. I'm going to maybe reduce the contrast a little bit more. Also, another thing you want to look at is you have a layer mask option here. So say, for example, I go ahead, use my brush tool. I'm going to use my layer mask option right here. If I use my layer mask option right here, what's going to happen is wherever I use my layer mask, my brightness and contrast is not going to work on that. So as you can see, I am erasing off parts of the brightness and contrast that is affecting this layer by just editing my layer mask option. So you can personally go and figure out where you want to do this. So say I want to only remove it from just her jacket. You can either use your brush tool, you can use multiple different tools to do this. So I'm just going to quickly use just my brush tool to quickly edit that. Oh. You could also go ahead and use your selection tools to make a good selection, and then do your edits within that selection. So say, for example, here, I'm not using my quick selection tool because I don't have too strong contrasts happening here in my image. If the colors are too similar, then it's not going to work. So I've made my selection. I'm going to do my edit in my layer mask within the selection. So now my selection is being made, and I'm going to edit my layer mask. And as you can see, when I use my brush, I can use my brush anywhere outside, but it's not going to make it because it's only going to do that edit within my layer mask. Okay. Sorry, not just my layer mask, but my selection as well. So that's how you can individually, based on the image that you have, how you can personally go ahead and edit it using your layer mask option. Let me fix this. I think there's a, okay, that looks better. All right. So we just explored brightness, contrast. We've seen how to clip it. Let's go ahead and explore some of those additional options too. I'm going to open up levels. Levels, again, it's going to work with the amount of brightness and darkness that you have in an image. Before I do any edits, I'm going to make sure that I clip this. I'm going to hit this option here to make sure that it's clipped to image 2. You'll also see this little arrow pointing down, meaning that it's clipped. If that arrow isn't there, then that edit is going to be applied to everything else. So you want to make sure that you see that arrow if you want to make sure that it's clipped to a particular image. All right, so here again, it does work kind of similar, but you have more freedom to move around. You have more adjustment capabilities here because it's going to change. If you move this lever, as you can see, it's reducing the amount of black you have in your image. And this is going to do the opposite. It's going to reduce the amount of lightness that you have in your image. So as I move this closer, it's making the image a lot darker. If I move this lever, it's making the image a lot whiter. And this is individual. You can, this also works in the same direction. Towards your left is darker, towards your right is lighter. So you can sort of edit in the levels within which your colors play. So you can see the contrast or the interaction between the colors have changed as I've edited these little levers that I have here. Okay, I think that's a little too strong, so I'm going to reduce that a little bit. Let's add a little bit of darkness to that image as well. All right. Now, we've explored a couple of basic lightness or value-related editing. Let's look at some of those color-related editing. You can go ahead and click on vibrance. That's going to affect the saturation and the vibrance of your image. Again, remember to clip it. So as you can see, if I increase this, all the colors that I have here are becoming more vibrant. Saturation also increases the amount of color that I have there. So if I look at my images right now, you can see that some of those areas are a lot more saturated. I think I want to keep her face clear of these saturations. So I'm going to use my brush tool in my layer mask, flip this around, and I'm going to reduce this from her face because I think it makes her look like she's got jaundice. And you can make this transition a little bit smoother by changing the type of brush that you use, reducing the opacity a little bit, changing the brush size. So I'm going to reduce the brush size a little bit there so that I can get some nice smoother edges around her hair. Okay. And you can do that to her hands as well so that it doesn't look like her hands are also weird in color. You want to avoid her looking like she's got jaundice. I'm going to increase this opacity, reduce my brush, because you can see there's some really strong oranges that's coming out on her body. And do the same to her leg here too. All right, make it look a little bit more natural. So this is where you can sort of personalize the edits that you're doing. If you want to do that with this in your levels option as well, you can go ahead and do that, and you can see that it's actually changing some parts of her color again. I'm not going to go ahead and do her hands because it's a little bit too much detail that's happening there. Let's just change her face. All right. And if ever you want to get that back, you can flip your layer mask around and get some of that color back in there. You're just editing your layer mask. Okay, so I've just added a little bit more shadow to her face basically in this. All right, so we just looked at how to edit vibrance. If at all you want to go in and edit that again, if you click on that layer which has that adjustment, you can go ahead and play around with those options right there. Okay. All right, let's leave that as it is. Let's go to the next one, which is, I think, something that I use quite extensively. This is hue saturation. Now, this is really, really useful. Just this alone, I usually use this in combination with maybe one of those levels or brightness and contrast. With hue saturation, you can see when I move the hue lever up and down, that's going to shift all the color values in my image. Let's remember to clip mask this. I'm going to clip that. And as I move this, you can see that it's affecting all the colors. The colors are sort of shifting in all different ways. See, the background is changing as I move my lever around. So if there's a particular area that you want to change the color completely, you can make a selection and then add this option to it and change this completely. So I'm going to do, let's move this, but not make it too weird. I think I might actually go in and change her face again because I don't want her face to change color as well. Also, our saturation is quite high here. That's why it's quite bright in our face. So the colors become too strong and you're not able to define or see any of the image. So you want to go ahead and mess around with your saturation option as well. Again, to sort of recap what we did earlier, if you feel like you made a terrible mistake with this, you can always reset this to its original by going ahead and clicking that option there, and that puts it back to its original form. So I'm going to move this just a little bit and reduce its saturation. All right, I think that's fairly decent. All right, I'm gonna go in, use my layer mask tool to edit her face again. Her lips look like she's dying, which I don't want. So I'm gonna go ahead, layer mask tool, use black, and let's go ahead and erase some of this out. To make it easier, you could also make a selection and just work with that selection so it's more or less easy for you to work with that. All right, that looks fairly. I think we might have to work with her hands too, because it's kind of obvious that her hands are of a different color. All right, looks decent enough. Let's go ahead and do her foot as well. All right, there you go. Okay, so as you can see here, what we've done is we've done some edits. We've changed the hue saturation, and we've created sort of a very different look and feel for our image. So I'm going to make another selection and do some more advanced edits on using these options, and I'm going to show you how to do that. But for now, let's go ahead and group all of this. Like, this is the effect that I want only for my image too. So I'm going to show you how to group it. I'm going to go ahead and click the image that these effects are being applied on. That's going to be right at the bottom. So go ahead and click that. I'm going to go ahead, press and hold my shift key on my keyboard. And then I'm going to click on the layer that's the topmost effect that I need to apply. When you do that, you can see it automatically selects everything in between. So I have all those layers selected. You can either hit Control G on your keyboard to group it, or you can hit this little folder button here. And that puts all of that into one group. So if I hide this, you can see that the entire group of images gets hidden. Okay, I'm gonna name this image 2. All right, I'm gonna lock this so that that doesn't move. And let's go ahead and create another duplicate of image 1 so that we can do some more advanced editing. I'm gonna go ahead, right click, and then hit duplicate layer. I'm gonna name this image 3. Okay, I have image 3 here, but when I move it, I don't have enough space. I need to move all of this. So I'm gonna zoom out. Let's go ahead and edit our canvas a little bit. I'm gonna use simple as my crop tool, and I'm going to expand this, and that's going to give me a longer board. Oops, let's make sure that we are on the right layer when we do this. Okay, make sure you're on a background layer, and let's go ahead, open that out so that we have enough space for our new layer. And once you expand this, go ahead and hit your commit, and you have your background that's extended out. Let's now move our new image all the way to that side there. All right, so we have image 1, image 2, image 3. So I'm going to move image 3 all the way to the top. I move that into my folder. So I'm going to push image 2 down, and image 3 is the image that I'm going to be editing right now. So quick effects that you can do is, like we did earlier, we edited the layer mask, but now we're going to look at how to make a selection and then do adjustments just to that selection. So I'm going to use my quick selection tool. I am going to select her skirt. Might be a little more difficult because the colors are a little, they sort of blend with each other a little bit more. So you want to make sure that you have a good selection. So spend a little bit of time to get a nice clean selection. And you can use a combination of different tools to be able to do this. So I can use this. If I want to add my lasso tool, I can. So I'm going to get my lasso tool, make sure I'm using add selection, and then add a selection to it. I want to subtract this part from it. So I'm going to use this part, which is subtract selection. Same here, I want to subtract this part of it. So let's subtract all of that. All right, let's add this part of the skirt as well. Let's get a nice, neat curve there. Okay, and you can use any of your other selection tools too. So if you want to use your polygonal lasso tool, you can. There's no general formula to it. Some people prefer certain tools. That's completely up to you as to which tool you want to use. All right, so now I have my selection made. I'm going to go and show you a really cool effect that we can add in, which is pattern. So I've made my selection. I'm going to go ahead and hit pattern in my adjustment tool bar. And that is going to pull up a little box of different patterns that Photoshop comes with. And you can go ahead and click this arrow here to see the different patterns that it has. So there are some tree patterns, there are some grass patterns, and there are some water patterns. So I'm going to use this tree pattern. You can change the angle of the pattern as well. As you can see, as I'm moving this angle, it's changing the placement of it. Okay, let's put it just about there. You can change the scale, you can make it bigger, you can make it smaller. I think that looks good. All right, and I'm gonna hit OK. Now when you look at this, you can see that my adjustment layer that I've made is not a individual clip mask similar to how we have here. So you can see a white clip mask. This mask that is being applied only to that skirt area. So if you make a selection and then do an adjustment, it's going to mask it. So that clipping option that we used in our properties panel to clip that particular adjustment to your layer, to your image, you don't have to do that now because it's only making it do that specific selection that you've made. However, as you can see, this is kind of very stark. It looks a little weird. Let's go ahead and use some of our, I'm gonna move this up. Let's use some of our blending tool options to make our trees look like it's part of that skirt. So here we have our blending tool options. Obviously these are making it too dark. Light is, it's okay. Doesn't look all that great. I don't mind that one. Overlay is a little better. You have soft light, kind of makes it look like a texture that's on there. Hard light. So you can choose, oh, I think that looks cool. So you can choose a couple of different options that you want from your blending options tool as to how you want this effect to fall on your garment or wherever it is that you're applying it. You can use your blending tools to be able to do that. Okay, let's go ahead and pick one for now. I'm going to use overlay, and I think I'll reduce my opacity of this a little bit so I can still see my skirt a little bit more. Okay, so this way you can select specific parts of your image and then edit it. Another thing you can do is say, this is the image I want to work on. I'm going to open up hue saturation. So in this image, I'm going to clip it to this layer. So I'm going to clip it so that it's affecting only my image below. Say I want to edit only the blues or the greens that I have in this layer. I have this option right here which says master. When I click that, I'm going to get a drop down box of different colors that are common colors that apply in an image. So I know that this image has a lot of cyan in it, so I'm going to click on that. Now, when I change my hue saturation, it's only editing the cyan colors. It is not editing anything else. So it's only the areas that only the colors in my image that fall under this category, this range of colors in my color bar here, that's going to be affected by my editing that's happening here. Okay, so say I pull this all the way till here. Let's make it a little bit more red. We're sort of changing the entire way that that image works. Okay, make it a little lighter. And similarly, you can go ahead and do that again. Let's add a new hue saturation where we are affecting all the, let's pick a color actually, instead of actually having to choose the only colors that are here. If you use this little hand picker tool that you have here, you can go ahead and pick a color. So if I'm say picking her hair color, now when I change, it's changing every color in this image that falls under this range. Okay, so I'm gonna move that a little bit. All right, let's get a little bit more saturation in there. Looks a little weird. Okay, I'm gonna undo this. I'm not very happy with that, but that's a different option that you have. You can apply a lot of these effects based on the colors that you have in your image. Okay, now one thing that I'm going to do in addition to this is make a really strong selection. Right now we made a selection using our selection tool. I'm going to go ahead and make a duplicate copy of this. I'm going to hit Control J. Let's go. Do we have, okay, Control J, or right click and hit duplicate layer. That's going to make a copy. And move this above. Oops. So you see what happened when I move this above. What happened was my clipping sort of got lost. So I'm going to move the one below so that I still have that. Now here, I'm going to make a selection of her hair. I just want to change only her hair color. The reason why you can't see any of those edits that we made below is because we have made a copy of this entire layer all over her. Okay, so I'm going to make a selection of her hair and clip mask that. I'm going to go ahead, quickly use my quick selection tool. As you can see, it is making a very big, broad selection. All right. And this is going to be very time consuming, especially because she has very frizzy hair. It's a very complex selection to make. So it's not going to give us a really good, accurate selection. So what we want to do is let's go ahead and clip mask this area first. Okay. So right now, this is just her hair layer that we've clip masked. And I'm going to go and hit this. This was an option we did earlier, but let's revisit that again. Select and mask option. When I hit that, it's actually, let's go back. I'm going to hide this here, this base layer that we have. And that's going to show you that this clip mask that we've made is just her head. Okay. Now that I'm in here, let's go ahead and erase all this additional things that we don't need. Okay. Let's go ahead and edit this a little bit more so that we can get a nice selection of her, just her hair, so that we can change the color of her hair. So I'm just quickly erasing using my brush tool to edit this clip mask. But I'm going to go into select and mask option right here. And that's going to open up this separate panel where I can personally go ahead and edit this. So I'm going to use this feather refine edge brush tool, and I want to reduce some of these areas here. So I'm going to use this tool with the minus option, and I am going to select all of that. And why isn't this working right now? Let's try and see if this works. Okay, there you go. That is working. Okay. So this is just a free open brush tool. Works like any other brush tool. We don't want it to look so obvious. So let's see if this refine brush tool works a little bit better. There you go. So I'm just going to go and use okay. My computer crashed, so I had to stop for a bit. Getting back. So we have image 3 here. We're going to make a close selection of her hair. So this is something that happens. My computer always crashes when I use that refine selection tool, but let's hopefully see if this works this time. So go ahead and make a selection of her hair. I'm going to use this tool to reduce my selection, whatever possible way that I can. Okay, looks fairly decent for now. Let's create a layer mask. I'm going to hide this, and this is what I'm going to select and refine. I'm going to add a little bit of her hair that's there and reduce her face that's there. I don't need her face. And here again, you can increase the size of your brush when you're working. just increase the smoothness so that the edges are not too sharp because it's hair. You want to have a smoother edge. You can go ahead, increase the feather so that the edges are a little bit, you know, spread out. Let's hope our tool here doesn't act up on us. Please work. Okay, let's not do too much of this so that it doesn't stop on us, okay? I'm just gonna go around her face as well so that that's a little bit smoother. All right, let's leave this for now, okay. Now that we have a selection, I'm gonna hit okay. So as you can see, let's maybe edit some of this. I have my layer mask already made. I'm going to just use my brush tool to edit some of that. Oops. Black. We have some of a body here, which we can go ahead and reduce as well. When you're working on more intense projects, you can be more precise with some of these things. It can be painstaking and time consuming, but sometimes the end product is definitely worth it. Especially when you're doing photo shoots, some more intense projects that can be really helpful. All right, so there I have her hair. I'm gonna bring back the body, and now I'm going to do some edits on this clipped layer mask. So I'm gonna go ahead and let's open up. Let's open up hue saturation, okay? I'm gonna make sure I clip this, and this is getting clipped to this image 3 here. Now when I change this, you can see it's just her hair that's changing color. And I think that's pretty cool that you can fix how you can edit just certain parts of a particular image. I'm gonna reduce the intensity or the saturation of that, so it looks a little bit more natural as compared to our background. You don't want her hair to look like it's sort of out of place or not natural. Okay, so you can change lipstick, eye makeup, all based on specific selections that you make. All right, so this is how you work around with editing layers and editing the colors of a layer. I'm gonna go ahead and group all of this together as well. So I have my image 2 here. I'm gonna make sure I group the rest of this as my image 3. So I'm gonna press my first layer and then press and hold shift, go to my topmost layer, and then let go of my shift, and that's going to select all of that together. I'm going to right click, actually don't right click, hit this folder here, and that's going to create a group of image 3. All right, so what we want is 4 different images of 4 different edits. So I'm going to go ahead and actually make my background a little bigger so I can bring in one more. You can make like a grid. You can either extend this out so you have 4 that way, or you can actually, I'm going to make this double the length, okay, so that this entire image comes down. So when I'm moving an entire folder, like this folder has a lot of layers in it, when I'm moving an entire folder, I want to go ahead and press my shift and then move that, okay? And if I press and hold shift and let go of my shift, now my layer is sort of independent and I can move that fully. All right, let us edit my canvas a little bit more so that it fits all 4 images. I'm going to do my crop tool again. I'm gonna bring that closer to this edge of this image here. And let's make this a little bigger here. All right. Okay, I am going to make a copy of this again, Control J, and I'm going to drag this copy right there. So now I'm going to have 4 different images or 4 different edits that I make from one single image. The main aim, again, like I mentioned, I want you to just explore some of these options that you have here. This is a wonderful tool to use when you are just trying to make an interesting composition. Go ahead and explore some of these options here too. So let's say in my image copy tool, let's make a new layer here. Let's make a quick selection of just certain parts. I know this is a pretty complex image, so I'm going to just quickly select around her body. Oh, that's a very bad selection. Say I only want this area to be edited, the background. And let's use a minus. Oh, I actually need that. Add selection to add that part in. Any places that you see a little bit of shadow, leave that shadow in. That will make it look a little bit more natural. So you don't want to take out the shadow. Right. I think this looks, let me edit a head. Seems to be chopped off. I'm going to just take a little bit of a head out as well. Oh. Wrong tool. All right. So I'm going to just try using one of these options. So this is going to invert all those colors there. So as you can see, it's sort of shifted all those colors to the opposite. And that's polarizing. So it's sort of creating a kind of like a really cool effect on it. So go ahead and explore all these options, as long as at the end of the day, you have 4 very distinct images that have some really cool effects. You're achieving what you need to do. I just want you to play around with all these options and see what Photoshop is capable of doing. Okay. All right. I hope you enjoyed this exercise. Thank you for watching.